Hello, welcome to our channel. We do tarot readings and astrology on world events, situations, countries, anything that people request. And today we are doing a reading for Germany.
Germany is going through some hellacious times right now. Volkswagen shutting down factories in Europe for the first time ever. The unemployment number is through the ceiling, much higher than they're letting on.
And the estimated numbers, not to mention. I don't think they're going to Thailand to continue their careers there. So we asked the cards what they think of the situation in Germany, not just Volkswagen, but the whole political situation. And there's a lot of drama, let's say.
What happens in Germany really affects all of Europe, and it always has. We could look back to the last century and see at least a couple of glaring examples of that. But Germany is the economic engine driving Europe. It's driving the EU. Germany is the boss, El Jefe of the EU.
If Germany goes down, the EU is hasta la vista, baby. So without further ado, let's see what the cards have to say, and Darwin will also read an astrology report on Germany. Okay, so let us start with the signifier. It's not a good German accent. We got the Fourth of Swords, which is a card of reflection and pause and introspection often. And I think that has to do with people are starting to see, the people of Germany are starting to see like, hey, okay, things are just wild. And they're reflecting upon what to do, but they're still being a bit passive. And this can be a useful card, but it might mean that there's a bit too much inaction, a bit too much thinking without action. We see in these other cards that that's not going to last for too long. And the root of the situation is the Two of Swords. And that has to do with choices. There are political figures that are making choices that are affecting millions and millions of people. And those choices will continue to affect them, especially if they remain in this position of just, thinking about it, thinking about how things are wrong.
It's pretty clear to anybody who's looking at what's happening in Europe this last few years that the choices the German government's making are more aimed at helping who they consider their bosses. It's NATO, it's the United States, it's the central banking cartel.
Not just in Germany, but many places.
Look at the Nord Stream pipeline bombing. They tried to blame that on Russia. Russia blew up their own pipeline because they didn't want to sell natural gas to Europe, apparently. What we've learned since then is the team that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline was headed by an Ukrainian special forces agent. So I'm kind of thinking it wasn't the Russians that blew up their own pipeline, but the real suffering from that event was in Germany, because it forced the cost of home heating through the ceiling. It's part of the reason that Germany's in such deep crap right now. And Germany did not benefit from this. NATO benefited from this. And who owns NATO? The United States runs NATO like a fiefdom. And any decision NATO makes isn't necessarily aimed at protecting the North Atlantic Treaty Organization states. It's aimed at protecting the banking cartel that owns lock, stock, and barrel the United States government.
So the reason that normal people allow these elite people to make decisions has a lot to do with Hierophant, which is the overall situation, kind of the background music and the overall theme of the period ahead, and that has to do with authority. And of course, history doesn't need to repeat itself necessarily, but there is this like almost ancestral tendency to follow authority. And I think that has to do with the fear too, because funny enough, we got the Six of Wands in the fears, and that's victory. So it's almost like they are afraid to standing up and being the victors because of the past. It's almost like, well, when we've been standing up before, it was beneath this kind of energy, and that didn't end well. But we see the Ace of Cups modifying the Six of Wands, and that has to do with new beginnings, new spiritual beginnings.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's almost like this collective trauma that needs to be cleansed out in order for people to step into their power.
And there's a lot of energy for the German people stepping into their own power and taking control and not letting themselves be led down the path they've been led down in the past.
We see that in the present moment. We have Temperance, which is a very spiritual card. And that's where the signifier, which has to do with rest and reflection, actually can be positive. That there is such a thing as being too passive, but perhaps before they act, they should kind of integrate what's going on and do it wisely. And this has to do with, receiving information, reuniting with their spiritual centers.
The gateway right now is the
Five of Wands.
And the gateway right now is the Five of Wands. That's cultural conflict, and that's what's tying everything together. That's what's going to make or break Germany right now. And the archons, the hierophants, the whoever the hell it is that the German government actually works for, they're bringing, like Germany especially, but all of Europe and much of North America, but especially Germany and Europe, has been inundated with refugees from the Ukrainian war, from the Syria, from our destruction of Syria, our destruction of Libya, the chaos taking place in Palestine right now. Whether it was designed or not, the net result of this chaos is this influx of people coming in randomly into Europe, and especially Germany, because that's where the economic engine of Europe is, to find work. And it's been uncontrolled, it's been unmonitored. It's almost like the situation was designed to bring in the most traumatized, violent, disturbed people.
Well, what happens is that one group of people, their influence ruins countries and cultures and people and traumatize them, and then, hey, let's bring them over here so that we can create culture wars. It's a divide and conquer method. So then the anger is not just towards the leaders who are not trying to be nice by taking all these people in because they're not integrating them. They're put in a place where they're not really welcome, right? So their goal is to just create a lot of chaos and conflict, and that's what the German people need to go through, because there is very likely, you see it in the way that people are turning further to the right wing, that people are finally reacting. And, it's not that there might be problems with refugees, but the main problem is these guys that are organizing it.
Is exactly how the National Socialists came to power in the 1930s. At that time, the boogeyman that the German people were afraid of were the communists, which, as we saw how the war ended, that was a valid fear, because basically Russia wiped Europe with Germany. It got half of Europe. They got Eastern Europe out of the deal. But Germany right now is going through much the same thing, where the German people are being forced to react against violence, against crime, against all the problems from this mass number of traumatized people flooding into their country. The reason this is a gateway is because how the German people handle this is going to determine their future, whether they repeat the past or whether they move on to something new. And the German people have a lot of energy and power to do just that, to move on to something new.
And we see that their desire is the Six of Pentacles modified by the Queen of Cups. This has to do with generosity, giving and receiving, and fairness. It's modified by the Queen of Cups, which is compassionate, feminine energy, right? So it's almost like deep inside in the soul of Germany, they actually want to have, they want to have enough for themselves, but also to be able to give. But when you're marginalizing your own people and bleeding them dry financially, that does not exist. It's not in balance. We have the World card, which has to do with wholeness, right? It's like, we are the world.
It's completion. It's bringing things to fruition. And the German people have the energy to do that right now. And if the German people are doing the right inner work right now to bring balance into themselves, and that's how they do it, bring balance into themselves, not Schultz or whatever the heck, Sergeant Schultz, no, the current chancellor. If they're not getting upset about the immigrants, and this problem really needs to be dealt with, because a lot of violent people have been brought into all the countries of Europe. And there's probably going to require locking down borders for a while. It's probably going to require sending some people somewhere else, or even imprisoning some of the more violent people. It's not going to be easy, it's not going to be pretty. But this card says that the German people have the ability to do this with balance. It's going to take a little bit of patience. They're going to have to wait out some of the chaos, and they're going to have to get through some of the chaos. And they're going to have to undo some of the decisions that were made by their shithead leaders that have created these problems. Because these problems were created to subdue the people of Germany, divide and conquer, like Victoria said. And I'll read the
astrology.
The astrology is not for the German people. This chart that we did was for the state of Germany. I used the unification date of East and West Germany in 1990 for the birth chart of the current German country, the New World Order country that is controlled by the WEF and NATO. It's not good. It's rough. The reunification of East and West Germany took place at midnight on October 3rd, 1990. That's the chart I used. The transit chart, based on that birth chart, means that Germany is in a very confusing time because Neptune, the planet of mystery and deception, is opposing Germany's Mercury, the god of communication, while Mars, the god of war, is directly opposing Germany's natal Neptune. This is a volatile combination that could see the German people deceived into fighting someone else's war. Mars opposing Neptune is always debilitating, but it's especially difficult now because Mars is going into retrograde and will be opposing Germany's Neptune for much of the next 7 months. This will discourage the German people and leave the country with inadequate resources for coping with day-to-day life. This will be made worse by the declining overall health of the people, possibly as a result of some sort of experimental medical procedure forced on the population. Mars opposing Neptune makes the German people especially vulnerable to the negative effects of drugs, and they're likely to experience terrible side effects. Between now and next April, Germany will have to face the consequences of past actions. But because of the declining health of its people, the country will be unable to act to rectify the problems it has caused. Neptune opposing Germany's natal Mercury puts Germany in a fog of confusion, leaving the people and power structures unable to think straight and resolve the problems facing the country. This is a very dangerous time. Either the people don't have all the facts or they're being deceived about the facts. This makes the people obsessed with strange ideas, unable to tell delusions from reality. This transit makes Germany susceptible to mass psychosis, and the people could be deceived into taking immoral action. And that's exactly what this gateway is warning about, being deceived into taking immoral actions, as has happened in the past. Not just to Germany, but to basically every country,
everywhere.
but Germany's was a bit more high profile.
Yeah. So, for the psychological future, we got the King of Pentacles. This is kind of the collective psyche of Germany. Since we have this energy going here, Temperance card, and we have the World, which has to do with wholeness and reflection and the spiritual understanding of things, there is a possibility we'll get to a place, or the German people will get to a place where they feel grounded and take back kind of the authority of their own country. The King of Pentacles, he's very grounded, he's very sensible and mature in his actions. So that's what will happen if we can get through the gateway, where they start realizing like, hey, this divide and conquer thing has been screwing everything up, and we need to like reassess ourselves and take back our power.
Hopefully this will lead them up to a place where they'll realize we need to not make the same mistakes we've made in the past.
And then in the future, we have kind of the opposite energy, or the counterpart in a way, which is the Queen of Wands. This queen has to do with creation, right? So it's like, okay, now that we're sitting safely on our throne again, and we're thinking clearly, what can we create now to move forward? All feminine energy is creative, and all the queens are more creative, and especially the Queen of Wands. The final outcome is, it's not the forever and always card, but it's kind of the final outcome of this chapter. And we got the Nine of Swords, which has to do with nightmares and anxiety and fear and waking up and being stressed out over things. It's a mental card mostly. I think when the dust settles a bit and they've gone through the transition that is needed, they'll kind of realize, they'll start to process everything that's been going on, and that's going to be a little bit hard.
And how it turns out really is up in the air. And I believe the German people handled this well if they basically tell their leadership to, go spoon a goose or whatever.
Go spoon a goose.
Yeah, if the German people tell their leaders to stick it where the sun don't shine, and they just take control of their own lives and their own world, it won't be such a bad outcome. Then it will be like they're waking up from a nightmare. But if they don't handle it right, and a lot of it depends on how they handle the cultural conflict that they're going through. If they handle it well, if they sensibly, and it's going to be difficult either way, but if they do it with compassion and foresight and think through their actions, then they're going to be rewarded with a good outcome. It's going to be actually waking up.
Judgment is rebirth, right? So that's actually a really good card to have at the end. It's just kind of like, okay, you're at ground zero again. What are you going to do?
But if they get reactionary, if they follow the dictates of their leaders and fall into this trap of fighting amongst themselves, then the judgment is not likely to come out in their favor.
All right, that was everything for today. Please comment below if there is any other reading you would like us to do, and we'll hopefully see you in our next video. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Ciao.
Oh,
Adios.
no. What is it? Auf Wiedersehen.
Yes, that.
Yeah.